Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to our fifth session of our Fact Sizzling Summer. This morning, we're going to be talking about summer melt, and we're going to talk about all kinds of different ways to keep cool during these dog days of summer. Presenters are Dr. Courtney Luking and Dr. Heather Norman Bergdorf. And I am going to turn it over to them right now. So um, you should be able to share your screen now, Courtney.
All right, how are we doing? Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Luking, and I'm here with Heather Norman Bergdorf, and we are so excited to share this moment in time with you. If you are like where we are today, it is hot and humid, and so this topic is of perfect timing, I think. Like Mindy said, we are in the dog days of summer. I think they might officially start next week, but close enough. And what that means is it's the hottest time of the year, and the temperatures alone could make us feel like melting. But if you've been around for 2020, we know that this year is unlike any other. And so there might be any other number of reasons that you or those that you live with feel like having a meltdown. And so to get us started, we would like to hear from you. We want to do a little bit of a poll. And while there are any number of reasons that you might feel like melting down, we've offered a variety of ideas, and we want you to tell us your top 3 sources. So to do that, whether you're on your computer or your phone, you can go to www.menti.com, and you are going to use code 286722. So I'm going to navigate to that page real quick, and this will just be a fun live poll for us. Oh, we've already got people voting. This is great. So again, that's tell us your top 3 sources of summer meltdowns. The temperature, maybe it's trying to keep cool on a budget, cooking all the time. Maybe you're having more time, perhaps inside with kids. Maybe you've gotten a lot of requests for sweet treats. I know that's been happening in our household. Or maybe kids are hungry before dinner is ready. And again, we realize this is a pretty narrow list of what might be causing meltdowns, but as you might anticipate, these topics are related to some of what we'll be able to cover today. So I'll give you just a few more seconds. It looks like I did a terrible job picking the colors here because the first and last columns you can't see, but the temperature is the #1 source of meltdowns, and I feel you. It looks like cooking a lot and trying to keep cool on a budget, those are in a neck and neck for second and third. And so while we can't do anything about temperature for you, I'm so sorry. I will like to share, if anyone was on before that we started, the Talking Facts podcast this week is talking about ways to melt your gut and trying to keep cool on a budget. So we highly encourage that you go listen to that. And if you have other questions about that, reach out to your local cooperative extension office because they have a lot of other resources. Or being inside with kids all the time, maybe you are running out of ideas of things to do, or maybe you are just bored in your house. So again, reach out to your local cooperative extension office and they can get you hooked up with some fabulous ideas and resources. But what are we going to talk about today? As you might have guessed from our title, we are going to talk about ways to avoid meltdowns, particularly in the kitchen, and especially if you have kids at home with you. And so some of our tips are going to include talking about no heat or low heat ideas for meals. So we mean this both physically and also mentally. And these are going to feature some of our Plated Up Kentucky Proud recipes that feature local Kentucky foods. We're also going to talk about ideas of ways to engage children in meal preparation. And this is a great way to spend one's time, especially if you are home all day and planning 3 meals and potentially snacks in there. And then finally, we're going to talk about fun frozen summer treats that are easy to say yes to, because what would summer be without some of these frozen treats? So let's start with our biggest takeaway that Dr. Norman Bergdorf and I wanted to share with you, and it is to keep it simple and come prepared. I think sometimes we might get caught up in the visions of pictures or ideas of days past, and we just want to be kind and gracious to ourselves. At the end of the day, we want to feed ourselves, we want to feed our family, and if we can do it nutritiously, even better. And so one way to go about that is to seek input, create a flexible plan, and share it with your tribe. So what we mean by that is reaching out to those that you live with. Who are you sharing meals with, or who are you preparing meals for? And asking them, talking to them, what would you like? What sounds good to you, so that the burden doesn't fall on the single person in the household who might typically be responsible for planning these types of things. And creating a flexible plan. A plan is great, but if we've learned anything from the past few months, flexibility is key. And so being able to kind of swap out, maybe you planned something for Monday, but that's no longer going to work out. You can flip flop it with something on Thursday that you had planned for. And share it with your tribe, because by sharing your plans and communicating them, it can minimize those mealtime meltdowns when people are like, I don't want this, if it's clearly communicated in advance. I'm not saying it will solve all the problems, but it's one tip and strategy to use. Another benefit of seeking input and having a plan is that you can structure and put foods together in ways that people will be more willing or interested in eating them. You can ensure that people have favorite or familiar foods at any given meal. And then when you have a plan going to the grocery store, it can make your shopping experience more efficient. Perhaps you'll walk out with fewer random impulse buys that I might do if I don't have a list or if I'm not hungry, or you're less likely to forget something, which I do all the time if it's not written down. And so now we've even gotten our 3-year-old in the process of seeking that input. So questions, for example, that I might throw out are, what kind of fruit would you like this week? And her answer for the past couple of weeks has been cantaloupe. Again, we're getting to choices, and we'll get to that soon. What does our communication plan look like? I literally just use a notebook and jot down, here's our meal ideas, and then that easily translates into a grocery list on the following page. But I know people have apps. You can use big whiteboards so that it's out there. People make fancy things, whatever works for you. But create a plan that gives you some sort of structure and share it. Our next tip is to cook one meal. I think especially if you have little ones, you might feel compelled to cater to their tastes, and then it feels like we are short order cooks. At the end of the day, in order to save our sanity and to encourage a wider variety of foods, even if we just try them, the ticket is to cook one meal. And this is where it comes back, circling back to that getting input, is ensuring that you pair familiar foods with less familiar foods. And the reason I say that is kids in particular, but it can also apply to adults, are more willing and perhaps less stressed about seeing different things on their plates, or less, they're more willing to try them if it is paired with something that they are familiar with. So for example, maybe my child loves macaroni and cheese, and then I can offer something new like broccoli on the side, or maybe mixed within it if that would go over well. So save your sanity and try to limit it to one meal. The next step, so you've planned it and you are going to, this is the plan, so we're going to stick with this, but kids seem to never be able to wait until mealtime, and we might feel that way as well. And hunger is real and can lead to meltdowns. And so one tip we'd like to share about that is, this is where the coming prepared comes into play. We always joke about like the mom bag or the dad bag or the grandparent bag, you have all the snacks. Have healthy appetizers on hand. So fruits and vegetables are going to be the best bet for this. They're usually pretty quick and easy to prepare. I would like to show you some of our favorite treats. Hopefully you can see these. So one of our go-tos, especially if we're creating a Mexican-inspired meal, is black beans. You can crack open a can. Sophia loves to dump and rinse them, and then she literally will just snack on them. So black beans, chickpeas, navy beans, for example, cannellini beans, they're pretty easy to let kids open and kind of serve themselves as you get the meal going. Another favorite is frozen vegetables. I like to do these, because I can just throw it in the microwave, and then we keep it in our refrigerator until we run out. So we can eat them cold, we can eat them warm. You could even pair these with a dip. Dip is a great way to introduce kids to new foods. It makes it fun. They might like the taste a little bit more, especially if vegetables, some of them have a bitter taste and kids can be more sensitive to that. So a dip like a hummus, that might be stretching it. You could also do ranch. The other day, Sophia literally ate a bowl of vegetables like this with some ketchup. And so it was what it was. And then you can come to the meal and they've already had their vegetables. Another favorite we do is frozen peas. We just get them out of the freezer and dump them in the bowl, and they are easy to munch on, a great source of fiber and protein. So that's one of our favorites. And then finally, fruit. So yesterday's meal, while we were cooking, so slicing up all of our things, we actually just cracked open a fruit cup of mandarin slices. So it doesn't have to be tough. It doesn't have to be complicated. But having those appetizers on hand can help keep hunger at bay. And again, they're more likely or willing to try them, and they can come to the meal having a good boost of fruit and vegetables, which all of us would benefit more from eating. Another way you can think about this is courses. So meals sometimes can take time. I'm a pretty simple cook though. And so I try to do everything all at once. But if you have things that are ready at different times, you could think about using those and serving them to children, particularly those young ones that may not be able to wait as they are ready. Our next tip is to offer choices. Who here likes to be told what to do? Anyone? And so adults and children alike, we like to know that we have a choice in the matter. And so when it comes to mealtime and the types of foods that are available, it's great to present children with choices of what you would want them to eat. So for example, I could say, would you like broccoli or would you like cauliflower? Would you like strawberries or would you like blueberries? And in some instances, she says neither, my daughter, but she might offer an alternative that still meets the bill of fruit or vegetable or whatever the choice was to begin with. So think about offering choices. This gives us all, children alike, a sense of independence. And finally, create a mealtime routine. We could probably do a whole series on this, and hopefully we will in the future if you think that would be interesting. But creating those meal times, we as humans like to know what's coming next. And so creating some sort of semblance of routine generates these expectations and makes it easier, so to speak, to fall in line. And it can also provide an opportunity to teach children and everyone in the home how to contribute to the preparation of a meal. And so some ways to do this. There are a lot of ways to involve kids in the creation process. So whether you are 1 or 101, everyone can have a role, and there are going to be benefits for everyone. You may be saying, no way, I spend enough time with the other people in my household at this point. I don't need them in my kitchen as well. But I invite you to just listen for a minute. So with our kitchen experiences, we expose others to sensory. We have our 5 senses. So as we are in the kitchen, children and adults can get kind of enhance or just use their sensory experiences in different ways. So we can see things, we can listen to the way that the foods are cooking. We can touch and feel the different textures of the foods as we can prepare them. We can smell and smell the changes as the food goes from one phase of preparation to being cooked. And then ultimately we can taste them. And this can be a powerful way to learn. And this then leads into the next point where children can learn and practice new concepts and skills, no matter the age. So children as young as 1 can be plopped down in the kitchen with you and just talking to them about what you're doing and what you see can improve their language. As children get older, they can begin to recognize and name things themselves, or they might be able to listen, practice listening skills if they're going to help you, and follow directions. And even older children who can read can start to read recipes and have kind of a more independent, more autonomous experience in the kitchen. And all of these lead to an increase in confidence. And part of that is because we're laying the foundation for lifelong skills. So we need to eat. That's the simple nature of human beings. And so exposing children at that early age, but it's never too late. Even if a child might, a child at heart who might be an older adult, that's okay too. But learning basic skills of how to put things together to create food will give them that confidence to move forward in life. It also can enhance fine motor skills, so being able to use our fingers for skills, but also gross motor skills. So think about how stirring and chopping and things of that nature uses muscle groups. And when children are involved in the preparation process, they are more willing to try things. So by having them help in the kitchen and the creation process, you can promote them to be a more adventurous eater, as we would like to say. And the last point is quality time. So again, you may be spending more time with those in your household, but cooking with individuals can be truly special. If you all want to take a moment and just think back maybe to when you were a child, any fond memory that you have in the kitchen with a family member or friend, it can be a really special time, and it provides a different feeling than the ways we might be spending our days otherwise. And I'll just quickly share a personal anecdote that we typically get Sophia involved in the kitchen in some way, shape, or form every night, if she's willing. She is a toddler preschooler. But this has become part of our routine, and it helps us transition to whatever perhaps chaos was going on before that into a more calm eating interaction. Not all of them are calm though, I promise you. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. You might be shaking your head, and so just a few last tips that I'd like to offer. Those are the benefits, but the reality of it is you're like, there's probably going to be more mess. There might be too many cooks in the kitchen, and that may be true, but one tip that we'd like to offer is assigning tasks and making sure that they're developmentally appropriate. So for example, your 2-year-old, you would not want to assign the task of chopping onions, but perhaps they can dump and stir things together. And then your older children or yourself or other adults in your household can be in charge of those more maybe dangerous actions in the kitchen. Engaging everyone in cleanup. So knowing that everyone has a task, when thinking about whether it's preparation or cleanup, charts might be helpful, or assignment lists or pictures. Young children can relate to pictures. And again, this can help set expectations of who is doing what, and hopefully help lessen any potential for meltdowns. And finally, let's remind ourselves that it takes time to learn new skills, whether we are young or young at heart. When we try things for the first time, it is hard, it is uncomfortable, and it is messy, whether in the kitchen or otherwise. And so circling back to something I said earlier is just trying to have patience and grace with yourself, but also your children. And if there is a mess, recognize that you have some extra hands for help. So what I'd like to do now is turn it over to our executive chef in training and his mom, Dr. Heather Norman Bergdorf, and they're going to help show us some of the things that we've been talking about.
All right, Courtney, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Maybe a little bit louder, if you can talk a little bit louder.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Heather Norman Bergdorf, and I have a sous chef here with me today. Can you tell them what your name is? We're working on it. Can you say Nolan? Nolan. He turned 2 in April. We've spent a lot of quality time together on this extended summer where he's been home. And one of the things that's really helped us is getting him engaged in the kitchen. Not only is it an activity that we can do that kind of helps pass time, it also adds routine and structure to our days. And I'm sorry, it is loud. He's 2. But it has been really helpful also just to give him an opportunity to learn since he's not in school. So today we're going to be making our first no heat recipe. It's a plated up Kentucky Proud recipe. It is our cucumber, corn, and bean salsa. Do you see we have the spoon in our mouth, which we're going to be using to cook. Everything's clean. We've washed our hands to save time for this recipe. We've already prepped all of our veggies. So essentially, rather than cooking, since there's no heat, we're going to be assembling. And so that's one of the ways, or one of the reasons why Nolan is able to help put together this entire recipe. So essentially, it's a salsa that could be, it's a crowd pleaser. There's a variety of things you could do with it. It could be that appetizer that kind of holds over kids, maybe if they're hungry, that Courtney had mentioned on a couple slides back. It's great to have on hand for a snack. And it could be a side dish for a meal, or it could be a base for a salad. So there's a lot of things you could do with this. Are we going to use this? Yeah, okay. All right. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to involve little humans in the process. So the main ingredient for this salsa is cucumbers, which, you know, the saying cool as a cucumber, or, you know, we kind of think of cucumbers as being refreshing, is because actually the inside of a cucumber could be up to 20 degrees cooler than the outside air, which is pretty crazy, but it's because their moisture content is so high. So the first thing we're gonna add to our mixing bowl are our cucumbers. Can you help me pour our cucumbers into our large glass bowl? These cucumbers are green. Good job. All right, we have some more. So this is a fine 2 regular medium-sized cucumbers that have been finely chopped, because you're thinking of it as a salsa. We have some more. So again, Grace, it takes a little bit more time. I'm allowing him to be independent. It won't be perfect. That's part of the learning process for both of us. Okay, great. All right, the next thing we're gonna add is, do you wanna go ahead and add this? This is a yellow bell pepper that again has been finely chopped, which is yellow. Perfect. Okay. Next, it calls for 2 tomatoes, but I just had a handful of snacking tomatoes here in the kitchen that I needed to use up, so we just use those. So this recipe can be pretty versatile. And then we also have a red onion, which has been finely chopped. Now, maybe you guys don't like onion. That's a flavor that's pretty strong. You could use a little bit less than what the recipe calls. Oh, let's wait. Hang on. Can you stir this, please? So that's something maybe you could cut back on. If you don't have a tomato on hand, maybe you could throw in a different color bell pepper. So there's really a lot of versatility with this recipe. So as the name suggests, cucumber, corn, and bean salsa, we're gonna add some corn to our recipe. Now you could use fresh corn, since that's gonna be coming into season. I had a can of corn, and so I just went ahead and opened that up. It's one less thing that I have to cook, so no heat there. And then probably the rest of this I will serve with dinner. Tonight when we have leftovers, it just gives another vegetable that'll be on the table. This just fell on the floor. That's fine. All right, and then beans. So Courtney even mentioned black beans being a great appetizer. So I have a can of black beans. They have been drained and rinsed. And then the rest of this can, because it only calls for ½ a cup, I'll probably serve to him with lunch. It's super easy, and it's a great thing for him to be able to eat on his own. It adds protein, and it can also be a really good snack. Okay, can you stir all of this together, please? Oh, use this, your spoon. Yeah, you stir that and be gentle, okay? So as he is going to attempt to stir all that together, the dressing. And so the dressing is very easy. It's very straightforward. I'm going to mix it directly in my measuring cup, so it's going to be easy to pour and toss on our vegetables. But it takes essentially 1 packet of dry ranch mix. I'm going to pour this in. It uses 1/8 of a cup of cider vinegar. So I already have that poured out. And then it also calls for 2 tablespoons of sugar. Now, if you wanted to, you could cut back on that sugar a little bit. You could use half of that, or you could kind of experiment a little bit to see what flavor you like the most. So we'll go ahead and pour this in. Let me stir this up. Are you ready? I'm going to pour this over. All right. Okay, let's stir this up. I actually already have a bowl pulled out because it is getting close to Nolan's lunchtime. And so he probably will have this with his lunch, maybe with a whole grain tortilla. He could kind of make a taco out of it. Or I could serve it with some whole grain crackers, tortilla chips. There's a lot of things that you could do with this recipe. Would you like to put some in your bowl? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. You want to use your big spoon? You want to use a baby spoon? Okay, you can use this spoon and pour some in there. This will keep in the refrigerator for a day or two. it makes quite a bit, as you can see. So a little bit goes a long way when you kind of assemble this meal or this recipe. And there's a variety of things that you could do with it to eat on it for over a couple of days. So do you need a spoon? Okay, I think he's ready to eat, Courtney, so I'll pass it back to
All
you.
right, that sounds good. That was so amazing. And so I think what I want us to way is that it is possible to cook with our little ones in the kitchen. And cooking will just look different at every age and phase of life. And to Heather's point, that we are learning together. So anyone who has worked with little ones in the kitchen, it is most definitely a learning process. And so now we want to hear from you. We want to see, how do you involve your family in the meal prep process? So you have a couple options. I think it was whether you ask for ideas for meals or snacks. And again, to answer these questions, we want you to go back to menti.com and use the same code. So this should just be the next poll that shows up. That's 286722. You might say, like, stay out of my kitchen. That's how I involve you. Like, I'm good. You may involve them in table setup or cleanup, or maybe you have some chef's helpers. So just take a moment and tell us what are some of the ways. So we can see it moving. People are asking for ideas for meals and snacks. This is great. Oh, somebody plopped in a grocery shopping buddy. So maybe you take someone with you. I can share that not all grocery shopping experiences are equal. If, some are better than others. Some end up with maybe, for example, them rolling around on the floor screaming. I don't know, but other times it's great, and it can be a good learning experience to kind of pull things off the shelf and talk about what you're seeing and what you'll do with it. So thank you to those who are participating. So it looks like most people ask for ideas. And then in second place, we have table setup or cleanup. And then chef's helpers. This is great. All right, Heather, I will turn it over to you if you feel ready now.
Yes. Thank you for your grace and your patience as we went through that. I will say that, he's 2 and it has been a learning experience. And also, I think a lot of times I underestimate what he's capable of. So challenge those kids in your life and kind of see what they're capable of doing. I didn't know that he was able to, it wasn't perfect, but spread peanut butter on crackers. And so, every day I feel like there's something new that I'm recognizing and realizing that he's able to do in the kitchen. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to kind of see them grow and develop in that way. Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, talking about kids being in the kitchen. Now, physically, how do we keep cool in the kitchen? And so the first thing that I'm going to recommend is skip the oven and the stove, those bigger appliances. So depending on the time and the temperature that's required for baking or cooking, your oven could be contributing quite a bit of heat inside your home. And so let's just look for ways that we don't have to use those larger appliances. So limit how many times a week that you use the oven, and maybe instead look at those smaller appliances or outdoor grills if you have one available. So I actually used the crock pot the other day. So you kind of think of that as being, cool weather or colder weather outside and you want to use a crock pot, but I was able to stick some chicken in there and I made homemade chicken tacos, and we've been able to eat on that for a couple days. So I used a smaller appliance that didn't give off as much heat. And then that's been something that's actually just been in our fridge and we could eat on for the past 2 or 3 days. So avoiding that stovetop and the oven. If you do have an outdoor grill, that would be a great idea because, again, that heat's going to be outside and it's not going to be inside your home. We have several resources out this week specifically that Courtney kind of plugged earlier that is about melting debt or managing maybe higher electric costs or air conditioning bills whenever it comes to the summer months. So again, feel free to reach out to your cooperative extension office about resources to help with financial management. Another idea to kind of keep your kitchen cool in the summer is something that I actually did in the recipe demonstration. And so the recipe called for 1/2 cup of cooked corn. And so I didn't want to have to dirty another pan or use a heat source for that corn. So instead, I opted for a can of corn, which I just had in the pantry. and was ready to be used. And I can repurpose the rest of that can of corn in something else that I make. So when possible, try to substitute low or no sodium canned veggies, specifically in recipes when it's calling for a cooked vegetable. Another idea there would be those frozen vegetables, which Courtney mentioned earlier too, because you're just using the microwave and you're not necessarily heating up a large appliance. And then the last idea is to repurpose those leftovers into a new creation. So if you had corn on the cob a couple nights ago and you've got a few ears that are left in the fridge that you need to use up, you know what you could have done? You could have cut those off the cob and you could have repurposed that into a recipe just like the cucumber corn and bean salsa that we made just a few minutes ago. So try to be creative in how you can reuse those leftovers so that you don't have to go back into the kitchen and turn on those larger appliances. And ultimately, this is going to help keep that kitchen cool during those super, super hot days of summer. And then, Courtney, if you want to go ahead and flip to the next slide. All right, so kind of feature what could be an entree meal or a piece of a meal. So this is our second featured Plated Up Kentucky Proud recipe for the day. So maybe that cucumber corn and bean salsa was your appetizer. You could think of this tomato basil salad as your entree. And so it could be a substantial salad if you add, you know, some protein to it, whether that's chicken or a piece of fish, or you could add some whole grain pasta to this to add a little bit more bulk. But this salad is perfect for the months of July and August because that's where we're seeing tomato and basil kind of flourishing. Both grow well in Kentucky. Basil grows all summer long, and maybe you've seen it at the farmer's market or you grow it yourself. If you're picking it, you want to avoid brown or wilted leaves, and basil can actually last in the fridge for a couple weeks if it's maybe kept in maybe a damp paper towel or something, but over time it will lose its flavor. So just keep that in mind. I also encourage you to look for tomatoes right now because they're going to be in season, either on sale at the grocery store or at the farmer's market. They're best stored on the counter and out of sunlight. So just keep that in mind. They actually taste better if they're not refrigerated. And so again, this is another meal where you're not having to cook, but you're more so assembling. And so this gives you a no heat option for a piece that could go towards another meal. All right. And then, as Courtney mentioned earlier, summer is 100% made for frozen treats. And so you can see here that there are a variety of ideas that they're perfect for an afternoon snack, dessert, or if you're just sitting outside in the evening. I know that we tend to go to our popsicles after dinner, but before bath because we're so sticky. But it's kind of a nice part of the day where we can just sit outside and enjoy quality time together. And so it could be as simple as sticking some of your favorite summer fruit in the freezer. It makes it a little bit more fun or different. Grapes would be great, or blueberries. If you've got kids under 4, I would cut those grapes in half before you freeze them. But just freezing that fruit kind of makes it a little bit more fun and adds a little pizzazz factor to it besides just eating it fresh. So that's a no cost. You don't need any special equipment for way that you could have something fun that's frozen. You a lot of times will think about kind of those fancy popsicle molds or, you know, contraptions that can make homemade ice cream, and that's great. And those, if you have those things, that's wonderful. But there still are a lot of things that you can do for very low cost. And one, I think Courtney has even plugged on a different webinar, is the beauty of just the simple ice cube mold. Nolan, when I see that maybe our strawberries are starting to go bad, or it seems like our brambleberries, raspberries are starting to fade and they're very ripe, I will have him, it's a perfect little opportunity for him to do some fine motor, place some of those raspberries in these ice cube trays, and we'll fill it up. And then he has fun fruity ice. And so he will ask for water, or his fruit water or strawberry water. And so I'll just pop 1 or 2 of these in his water bottle, and it makes water so much more exciting for him to drink, especially during these really hot days. So just a simple ice cube tray could be something great to have in the kitchen to help entertain kids with some frozen treats. You could also fill this and make tiny little popsicles as well. So you could freeze maybe leftover smoothie or you can find all kinds of homemade popsicle recipes online. Just put a little popsicle stick in there and then you've got a really small, probably toddler, perfect size popsicle for them to use. The one that I love, and I'm actually planning on trying, and I have never done before, is using those popsicle sticks to make essentially the watermelon slice popsicle, right? That makes it so much easier for a kid to eat and makes it look much, much more fun. And so you can just think outside the box. There's tons of different things that you can do when it comes to homemade frozen treats that really have very little cost or no cost at all. We also have some plated up Kentucky Proud recipes that would be perfect to repurpose as a frozen treat. For example, we have a melon berry smoothie, which those things would be in season right now. And you could actually freeze that smoothie back and would make a great popsicle as well. All right, the next slide, please. All right, so I want to hear from you guys. So what is your favorite homemade summer frozen treat? And I think we have some options there as well. I'm excited to see what you guys say. All right, so we have, what is your favorite homemade summer frozen treat? Ice cream, frozen fruit, so simple. Anybody else want to jump in? Shaved ice. Frozen yogurt, milkshakes. I remember having homemade milkshakes when I grew up. Popsicles, they're so easy to grab and go. All right. Still looks like ice cream is coming out on top. Frozen banana smoothies, someone just said in the chat, and that sounds delicious. So it looks like we have some representation from all the different options there, but I think ice cream still came out on top. I'm sure that if we could break down ice cream a little bit more, we would see different flavors. I'm trying to think, chocolate probably would be my favorite ice cream. But thank you for sharing and participating in that. And so the last recipe that we're gonna kind of plug, that's Plated Up Kentucky Proud, that requires no cooking, is our Very Berry salsa. So for all of you all that put ice cream as your favorite frozen treat, listen up, because again, we want you to kind of think about how you can repurpose some of these recipes and use them in creative ways. Well, Courtney and I think that this would be perfect served over ice cream. So a lot of these berries, oh, and someone just said it's their favorite plated up recipe. A lot of these berries are going to be in season right now. And so they're those brambleberries, the blackberries and the raspberries, they can be expensive during the off season, but since they're in season right now, they're going to be the cheapest, the most affordable, as well as have some of the best flavor. And so that's why we want to take advantage of it being the heat of the summer, and those things are available to us right now. Remember, the darker the berry, if you're purchasing them, means the sweeter it is. So that's a consideration. You could serve this, if you don't want ice cream, you could serve it with graham crackers, or you could make homemade tortilla chips with, instead of salt, maybe some cinnamon. And what's great about this is, again, you're just assembling. Essentially, you're washing your produce and then you're prepping it. And so it actually calls for some apples, which are usually found throughout the season or throughout the year with no problem. And then you are just gonna wash those berries, which the best and easiest way to wash berries, I'm sorry, so sorry. The best and the easiest way that we recommend washing our berries is essentially just submerging them in water and then lifting them up out of that water. And we don't want to wash them until right before we eat them. That's really the best way that they will stay fresh when we store them in the refrigerator. So just wash them right before you prep them. And again, you're just assembling all these things, and there's a lot of flexibility with this recipe. It calls for 1 tablespoon of fruit preserves. So it's whatever you've got on hand. So you could kind of experiment and try different fruit preserves to see if you like one better. It also calls for some additional sugar, but you could try it and maybe use a little bit less sugar, especially if your berries are really, really ripe, because they're going to be pretty sweet on their own. And you might find that you don't necessarily need to add any sugar at all. So you can kind of play around with the recipe to see what works best for you. All right. So essentially, we've given you a menu, a 3-course meal using Plated Up that's no heat or low heat. So we have that cucumber and corned bean salsa, which could be that appetizer. We had that tomato basil salad, which could be your entree, where you could add some protein or a whole grain to it to kind of bump up and make it a little bit more substantial. And then essentially we gave you dessert, an idea where you have that berry salsa, where you could serve it over ice cream or just be creative. We know that it's a very popular recipe and that a lot of people enjoy it, especially during the summertime. So we want to thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you've heard or saw just one little piece of information that you can take back that was practical and makes sense, and that you can try to implement when you're in the kitchen, especially when you're working with little ones. And just my final reminder, and I know Courtney said this as well, is this is a time for us to all extend grace to ourselves and to others and to the little people that are in our lives. And so I just want that to be the main take-home message, is that it doesn't have to be perfect, but just giving those kids an opportunity to learn and grow in the kitchen is really going to set them up for success down the road when it comes to their own eating behaviors and their independence when it comes to be able to preparing their own meals. Courtney, is there anything else you want to throw in there?
No, I think you did a great job summarizing it, and just, yeah, love to hear from you if anything in particular resonated, or if you still have other questions that we can help you navigate.
Perfect. And then if you do have a question, feel free to put it in one of the chat boxes, but we will make a plug for next week, same time, same place, as we continue with our Family and Consumer Sciences Sizzlin' Summer series. We're going to be talking about, the places you'll go and vacations, and kind of how that might look different this year, and still some fun ideas and opportunities for your family when you are at home. And so that'll be led by Dr. Jason Swanson. So that's next Thursday, July 23rd at 11 a.m. And that can be found on the exact same Facebook page that you found this one.
Heather, you do have a question about the salsa.
Yes.
If you can use frozen berries instead of fresh berries.
Yes, I think so. I haven't actually made it with frozen berries before, but I know that others have, and it's turned out just fine.
I have made it with frozen berries, and it's gonna be a little bit of a like a traditional salsa as opposed to those the nice berries, but it tastes delicious either way.
Yeah, so I would say if you're using frozen berries, that because the water content will be higher, that it will be thinner. So maybe it would be like a nice syrup to go over ice cream in that way. But if you're using fresh berries, it's going to be much thicker and chunkier.
Yes. Do we have any other questions? Anything coming in from Facebook or?
Just in the Zoom chat box, that there are many compliments on Nolan. So I'm not sure about Heather and Courtney, but Nolan is definitely the star today.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
did
everyone can fill out the evaluation, and you can put in there how much you love Nolan.
Heather and Courtney did do a great job, but I think that Sally is right. Nolan has stolen the show, and he has certainly melted my heart. So I think
his little shirt, he had on a FCS shirt.
Yes, he did. I noticed that, and I was very proud of him for representing his mommy's work. That's a great job. A great job for everybody. As Heather said, we will be back here next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time or 10 a.m. Central time, and we will be talking about summer vacation. So we hope that you'll join us. In the meantime, if you'd like to take the survey, as Heather mentioned, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen right now, or you can type in the link, the bit.ly link that you see underneath the QR code. There is no space after the R, even though it looks like there is. So when you type that in, make sure not to put a space in there as well. All right, I think that I'm going to check just to make sure this is not a question that we have coming in. And I think we're all good. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again next week, we hope.
Thank you. Thanks, you all.